Welcome back, friends. We have finished our cuff and the leg part of our sock. I did want to point out that I did change the color of my markers as I started on the leg. I do like to change the color of markers just so that when I'm knitting the second one, I know, hey, I'm starting a new section. I'm doing something different now than I was before. And that's why I recommended at the beginning that we have at least 2 different colors of markers. That's just something that I like to do. It's not required. Just for my own brain, I kind of like to knit projects where I don't have to think a whole lot and I can do it while I'm watching TV or whatever. And that's just a little notice to me that something's changing. So I have knitted this as long as I want my leg. I think I ended up doing about 5.5 inches, putting these markers every 5 rows just to make it easier on myself later. So we are going to start the heel flap of the sock. So in order to make our sock look foot-like, we have to make the heel part of the sock, and we're going to be continuing longer than the top part of our sock so that it makes a curve where our heel is. So I found this handy dandy photo in a sock pattern by Christine Burkhardt, and she made a very nice little visual representation of the different parts of the sock. So where we are at now is this little pink area on the back of the sock, the heel flap, and that is going to go down along that tendon that hooks your heel to your calf. And we are going to be knitting it over half of the stitches on our sock. So you can see here where at the top of that pink part on the heel is that navy blue, and that navy blue continues all the way through on the front of the sock. So we will only be knitting half of the stitches on the back of the sock. So lucky for us, we already have half of our stitches on the front, on the side of the sock that's facing me. This is the first half of the stitches that we were working on when we were working in the round. We are going to be working back and forth on just those stitches to create this heel flap. So these stitches back here are just going to hang out back there on the cable of the needle. So we don't need to do anything with those, just let them be. So with the socks by the number, we're going to be working on half of the stitches. Remember, my sock number over here is 40, so I'll be knitting over these 20 stitches. You will have probably a different number, but it's going to be half of your sock number. And then how many rows are we going to make for our heel flap? It is going to be half the number of our sock number. So I'm knitting on 20 stitches, and I'm going to do 20 rows. So I'm going to do a couple of rows together with you, and we're just plain doing stockinette stitch. So I'm going to be doing knitting across this way, and then when I come back, I'm going to be purling. And then at the beginning of each row, I'm going to slip 1 stitch. This will become important later. So I'm going to go into the first stitch as if I'm going to knit it, and then just pull it right off that needle. I'm not going to use my working yarn at all. And then I'm just going to go ahead and start knitting all the way across. What slipping that first stitch does for me is it creates a nice, even, neat edge to the heel flap, and it's going to make it a lot easier to pick up stitches along the heel flap later when we get to that part of the sock. It's a little noisy from those markers. So I'm knitting all the way across here. I'm not going to pull my needles through like I normally would if I was going to continue around in the in the round, I'm just going to flip my sock over and start purling back. So I've completed one row. So this time I'm going to slip the stitch purlwise, the first one, so because I'm purling this row, and I'm going to just continue and purl all the way back to the beginning. And I'm going to continue in this way, only working on these 20 stitches, or these half of your stock number stitches, for half of your stock number rows. For me, that means I'm working 20 stitches and 20 rows. You may have a slightly different number there. Should be an even number though. So I'm going to add a stitch marker on that first row that we did, so it'll be one under the one that's on the needle, so that I can start counting my 20 rows. And then again, remembering to slip the first stitch. I'm going to give that just a little tug because I don't want it to be too loose, but I don't have to really yank it either. Slip the first stitch and then knit all the way across. So we're going to be doing this back and forth for me 20 rows. An important little note is on your last row of this section to go ahead and put a round or a closed stitch marker like this one halfway down your stitches. So I'm working on 20 stitches. I'm going to put this marker between the 10th and 11th stitch on my needle when I get to the 20th row. That's just a setup for the next portion that we're going to be doing, which is the heel cap, where we really make that turn on the heel. And we're going to be doing short rows around that stitch marker. So on the very last row of this section, be sure to put your stitch marker in the halfway in the middle of your stitches on the needle. So I will see you back for the next part.